What if Ned Stark told Robert the truth about Jon Snow on his deathbed? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The Red Keep's royal chambers reek of wine and death. Robert Baratheon lies sprawled across his massive bed, his once powerful frame now broken and bloodied from the boar's tusks. The hunting accident that was meant to be a glorious day has become a deathbed scene. Grand Maester Pycelle moves frantically around the room, his potions and bandages useless against wounds that will not heal. Ned Stark stands at his friend's bedside, watching as the King of the Seven Kingdoms slips toward the stranger's embrace. Robert's breathing comes in ragged gasps, each one weaker than the last. Yet his eyes remain clear, focused on Ned with the same intensity they shared during Robert's rebellion 16 years ago. "The throne," Robert whispers, blood flecking his lips. "Joffrey, the boy will need guidance. You must be his hand." Ned nods grimly, though his heart knows the terrible truth about Joffrey's parentage. The golden-haired prince is no true-born Baratheon, but the product of Cersei's incestuous affair with her twin brother, Jaime. It is a secret that could tear the realm apart, yet it pales beside the other burden Ned has carried for 16 long years. Cersei stands near the window, her face a mask of grief that Ned knows to be false. She watches every word, every gesture, calculating even in her supposed moment of loss. The small council members hover at the chamber's edges like carrion crows, waiting for their king to die so they might feast on the power that follows. For a moment, Ned considers staying silent. The secret of Jon Snow's parentage has been his burden alone since that terrible day at the Tower of Joy. Lyanna's voice echoes in his memory. "Promise me, Ned. Promise me." He had sworn to protect her son, to hide the boy's true nature from a world that would see him dead for the crime of being born. But Robert is dying. His oldest friend, his brother in arms, the man who fought beside him when they were young, and the world seemed simpler. In mere moments, Robert will pass into whatever lies beyond, and Ned will lose his final chance to unburden his soul of the lie that has haunted him for 16 years. "Robert," Ned says quietly, leaning closer to the dying king's ear. His voice drops to barely a whisper. "There is something I should have told you long ago." Robert's eyes focus with effort. "Speak, Ned. Whatever it is." The words catch in Ned's throat like broken glass. How does a man tell his closest friend that everything he believed about honor, about love, about the woman who drove them to war, was built upon a lie? How does he reveal that the bastard boy he claimed as his own shame is actually the last living son of the man Robert hated most in all the world? "It's about Lyanna," Ned whispers, "about what happened at the Tower of Joy." Robert's breathing grows shallower. "My Lyanna, that bastard Rhaegar, what he did to her." "No," Ned says, the word heavy as a tombstone. "Robert, listen to me. She went willingly. Lyanna loved him. She married him in secret." The dying king's eyes widen in confusion and growing horror. "What are you saying?" "Jon Snow," Ned continues, the words tumbling out like water through a broken dam. "He's not my bastard, Robert. He's Lyanna's son, Rhaegar's son, born at the Tower of Joy before she died in my arms." For a moment, the chamber falls silent, save for Robert's labored breathing. The color drains from the king's face as the words sink in. His entire worldview, the foundation of his rage and his crown, crumbles in the space of a heartbeat. "No," Robert gasps. She was taken. Kidnapped. Raped." "She loved him," Ned repeats, tears streaming down his weathered face. "She begged me to protect their child, to hide his true parentage from the world, from you. Jon is Aegon Targaryen, the true-born son of Prince Rhaegar and your beloved Lyanna." Robert's hand clutches at Ned's sleeve with desperate strength. His breathing becomes more erratic as the revelation tears through him like a second set of mortal wounds. The woman he loved, the woman whose supposed abduction had driven him to war and won him a crown, had chosen another man, had borne that man's child, had died for love, not from violation. Cersei moves closer, her sharp ears catching fragments of the whispered conversation. Her face grows pale as she hears names that should not be spoken. Jon Snow, Rhaegar, Targaryen. Her mind races through the implications like a spider, spinning webs of opportunity and threat. "The boy," Robert whispers, his voice barely audible. "Jon. He's the rightful king," Ned finishes. "By all laws of inheritance, he is the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, Rhaegar's legitimate son with a legitimate wife." Robert's eyes close as the weight of it settles upon him. His entire rebellion built on the lie of Lyanna's kidnapping. His hatred for House Targaryen directed at a man who had loved truly and been loved in return. His crown, won through war, sparked by his own misunderstanding of his betrothed's heart. The dying king opens his eyes one final time, looking at Ned with a mixture of devastation and terrible understanding. "Bring him," he gasps. "Bring Jon to King's Landing. The realm must know." "The truth." Robert Baratheon's hand goes limp in Ned's grasp. The first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, dies with the knowledge that his life's greatest victory was built upon his life's greatest lie. Cersei steps forward as Ned gently closes Robert's eyes. Her face is a mask of cold calculation as she processes what she has overheard. A Targaryen boy at Winterfell, a boy with a stronger claim than her son Joffrey, stronger even than Stannis or Renly. The revelation changes everything. Grand Maester Pycelle begins to speak the ritual words, but Ned barely hears them. The secret he has carried for 16 years is finally spoken aloud, and with Robert's last command still echoing in the chamber, he knows there can be no going back. Jon Snow's time as a bastard is ending. The realm will soon learn that the boy they thought was Ned Stark's shame is actually the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And with that knowledge will come war, chaos, and the reckoning that Ned Stark has spent half his life trying to prevent. The truth, as Robert learned in his final moments, has a way of demanding payment for the years it was hidden. And the price of this truth will be paid in blood across the length and breadth of the Seven Kingdoms. For a moment, the chamber holds the silence of the grave. Robert Baratheon's eyes stare at the ornate ceiling of his royal bedchamber, but his mind travels back 16 years to memories of war, love, and bitter loss. The revelation that Ned has just whispered burns through him like wildfire, rewriting every moment of his adult life. Lyanna, his beautiful Lyanna, not stolen, but choosing, not violated, but loved. The image he had carried in his heart, of his betrothed weeping in some dark tower while the Silver Prince forced himself upon her, crumbles like castles built of sand. "She loved him," Robert whispers again, the words like poison on his tongue. His massive frame shudders as he recalls the tourney at Harrenhal, where Rhaegar had crowned Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty instead of his own wife. Robert had thought it an insult, a calculated slight. Now he understands it was something else entirely. A public declaration of love from a prince to a woman who loved him in return. Grand Maester Pycelle hovers nearby, his chains clinking softly as he tends to wounds that cannot be healed. Lord Varys stands in the shadows, like a spider watching flies, his pale hands folded within his sleeves. Sir Barristan Selmy keeps his vigil by the door, his weathered face grim with the knowledge that kings die as easily as common men. But it is Cersei who concerns Ned most. The Queen stands frozen near the window, her green eyes bright with calculation. She has heard enough to know that everything has changed, that the bastard boy in Winterfell represents a threat to her son's crown greater than any army. "Jon," Robert gasps, his voice growing weaker with each word. "The boy, he is the rightful king. Rhaegar's true-born son with a true-born wife." The small council members exchange glances of confusion and growing alarm. They had expected Robert to name his heir and die peacefully. They had not expected their dying king to speak of Targaryens and legitimacy with his final breaths. "Your Grace," Pycelle ventures carefully, "perhaps you should rest. The pain may be affecting your thoughts." "My thoughts are clear," Robert snarls with the last of his strength. "Clearer than they've been in 16 years. Ned speaks the truth. I can see it in his eyes. The same honesty that made him a poor player in the Game of Thrones, but the best man I have ever known." Robert's hand finds Ned's arm with desperate urgency. "Send ravens to Winterfell, to every lord in the 7 kingdoms. Jon Snow is to be brought to King's Landing immediately. He is to be acknowledged as Aegon Targaryen, the 6th of his name, true-born son of Prince Rhaegar." The chamber erupts in stunned whispers. Varys's eyes narrow as he processes the political implications. Sir Barristan's hand moves instinctively to his sword hilt. Pycelle looks as though he might faint from shock. But Cersei steps forward, her voice sharp as Valyrian steel. "Your Grace, you are dying and in great pain. These fevered words cannot be your true wishes. Think of Joffrey, your son and heir." Robert's eyes blaze with the fire of a man who has finally seen through years of lies and deception. "Joffrey," he says, and in that single word lies a lifetime of suspicion finally given voice. "Golden-haired Joffrey, my son who looks nothing like me, and everything like." The dying king's gaze fixes on Cersei with terrible understanding. Another truth, another lie exposed in his final moments. Ned watches in horror as Robert connects the pieces he had been blind to for so many years. "Like his true father," Robert finishes. "Tell me, wife, when did you last birth a child with black hair? When did you ever give me a true-born heir?" Cersei's face goes white as snow. The game is exposed, the lies laid bare. In the space of minutes, Robert has unraveled not one deception, but 2. Jon Snow's hidden legitimacy, and Joffrey's hidden bastardy. "Sir Barristan," Robert commands, his voice carrying the authority of 16 years of kingship. "You will see that my commands are carried out. Ravens to every corner of the realm. Jon Snow, Jon Targaryen, is to be acknowledged as the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. He is to be brought south under royal protection." The old knight nods grimly. "It will be done, your Grace. On my honor as a knight of the King's Guard." "Grand Maester," Robert continues, each word an effort that brings him closer to death. "You will write the proclamation. Every lord will know that I acknowledge the truth of Jon's parentage with my dying breath. That I name him my rightful successor over any other claimant." Pycelle's hands tremble as he nods. The political earthquake Robert is unleashing will reshape the 7 kingdoms in ways none of them can predict. Robert turns his fading eyes to Ned one final time. "I should have listened to you more, old friend. About honor, about duty, about the cost of lies." His breathing grows more labored. "Protect the boy. Protect Jon. He will need you in the days to come." "I will," Ned promises, though his heart is heavy with the knowledge of what his confession has unleashed. "And Cersei," Robert says, his voice now barely a whisper, "my queen, my beautiful, treacherous queen. You will not harm him. You will not harm any of the Starks. I may be dying, but my commands will outlive me, and there are those who will see them carried out." Cersei says nothing, but her silence speaks volumes. Already her mind is racing through possibilities. How to discredit a dead king's ravings, how to eliminate the Targaryen threat before it can take root, how to protect her children from the political storm that is about to engulf the realm. With his final breath, Robert Baratheon speaks words that will echo through the Seven Kingdoms for generations to come. Long live King Aegon, the sixth of his name. Long live the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The king is dead. But with his death comes not the smooth transition of power that the realm expected, but the seeds of the greatest succession crisis since the Dance of Dragons. Robert's final commands hang in the air like thunderclouds, promising storms to come. Sir Barristan immediately moves to carry out his king's final wishes, but Cersei blocks his path. "The king was mad with pain," she declares to the room. "These words cannot be taken as law." "The king spoke clearly and with witnesses," Ned counters, his voice heavy with the weight of destiny. His final commands must be honored. The small council finds itself divided in the space of heartbeats. Some see opportunity in chaos, others duty in a king's dying words, but all understand that the realm will never be the same. Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, has been proclaimed the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms by the dying breath of Robert Baratheon himself. And in that proclamation lies the spark that will ignite a war that will consume the realm in fire and blood. The Game of Thrones has taken a turn that no one could have predicted, and the wheel of fate begins to turn toward a destiny that will test every oath, every loyalty, and every crown in Westeros. The truth, as Ned Stark has learned too late, is indeed a double-edged sword, and the realm is about to feel both edges cut deep. The ravens fly from King's Landing like harbingers of doom. Grand Maester Pycelle's hands shake as he seals each scroll with the royal seal, knowing that the words within will reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Despite Cersei's protests and threats, Sir Barristan Selmy stands over the old man's shoulder, ensuring that Robert Baratheon's final commands are carried out to the letter. The first raven reaches Winterfell within a fortnight, its black wings cutting through the grey northern sky like a blade. Maester Luwin's weathered hands tremble as he breaks the seal and reads the impossible words that will shatter the world he thought he knew. In the great hall of Winterfell, Catelyn Stark sits beside her eldest son, Robb, discussing the harvest and the approaching winter. The news that Robert Baratheon is dead reaches them first, carried by earlier ravens. But this message contains revelations that strike at the very heart of House Stark. "My lady," Maester Luwin says carefully, his voice heavy with the weight of destiny, "there is more news from the capital, about Jon Snow." Catelyn's face hardens at the mention of Ned's bastard. For 16 years the boy has been a reminder of her husband's supposed infidelity, a stain upon her marriage and her honor. But Luwin's expression suggests something far more significant than news of a bastard's fate. "What about him?" Robb asks, his voice carrying the authority of the young Lord of Winterfell in his father's absence. Luwin unfolds the parchment with trembling fingers. "King Robert, on his deathbed, proclaimed that Jon Snow is not Lord Stark's bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, the true-born son of Prince Rhaegar and Lady Lyanna Stark." The silence that follows is deafening. Catelyn's face goes white as winter snow, her mind reeling as 16 years of resentment and pain suddenly shift and reshape themselves. The boy she had hated, The child she had seen as proof of Ned's dishonor was not her husband's bastard at all. He was her husband's nephew, the son of his beloved sister and the Silver Prince. "That's impossible," Robb whispers. But even as he speaks the words, pieces begin falling into place. Jon's resemblance to Arya, who looked so much like Lyanna. Ned's refusal to ever speak of Jon's mother, the way their father had insisted on raising the boy as his own, despite Catelyn's objections. The king commanded that Jon be brought south immediately, Lewin continues. He is to be acknowledged as the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Catelyn feels as though the ground has shifted beneath her feet. Relief wars with horror in her chest. Relief that Ned had never betrayed her. Horror at the implications of what this revelation means for her family. If Jon Snow is truly Aegon Targaryen, then he outranks everyone in the realm, including her own children. Meanwhile, far to the north at Castle Black, another raven arrives carrying the same impossible news. Maester Aemon Targaryen, the blind old man who has served at the wall for most of his long life, listens as the message is read aloud. His ancient heart pounds as he hears the name Aegon spoken in connection with his great-great-nephew. Jon Snow stands before the Maester in stunned silence. The boy who had come to the wall as Ned Stark's bastard now learns that he is the last male heir of the Dragon Kings, the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. The irony is not lost on Aemon. Jon has just sworn sacred vows to the Night's Watch, vows that should bind him for life and prevent him from ever taking a crown. "The king is dead," Jon says numbly, struggling to process the revelation. "And he named me king," Aemon finishes softly. "If the message speaks true, you are Aegon VI of his name, rightful heir to the Iron Throne." The old Maester's blind eyes seem to see more than most men's. "Tell me, Jon Snow, do you remember your dreams? Do you dream of dragons?" Jon's face pales. He has indeed dreamed of dragons, dreams that he had attributed to stories heard in childhood. But now, with the truth of his parentage revealed, those dreams take on new meaning. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon reads the Raven's message with his characteristic grim expression. The righteous lord had been preparing to press his own claim to the throne, believing himself Robert's rightful heir. Now he learns that a boy at the wall has a stronger claim than his own. If this is true, Stannis tells his Maester, then the boy's claim supersedes mine own. Rhaegar was the crown prince. His legitimate son comes before Robert's brothers in the line of succession. Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, watches his lord wrestle with duty and ambition. "What will you do, my lord?" Stannis stares out at the dark waters surrounding his island fortress. "What I have always done, Davos. My duty. If the boy is truly Aegon Targaryen, then he is the rightful king. I will not usurp a legitimate claim as others have done." But across the narrow sea at Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister receives the news with calculating eyes and a mind that sees opportunity in chaos. The old lion sits in his solar, reading and rereading the message that could destroy his daughter's position and threaten his grandchildren's lives. "A Targaryen pretender," he muses to his brother Kevan. "Convenient that Robert suddenly discovered this truth on his deathbed, just as my grandson was about to be crowned." "What do you make of it, my lord?" Kevan asks carefully. Tywin's lips curve in a smile that holds no warmth. "I make it a threat that must be eliminated before it can take root. If the realm believes this bastard boy is the rightful king, then Joffrey's crown becomes worthless. We cannot allow that to happen." The Lion of Casterly Rock begins composing his own messages, calling his banners and reaching out to allies who might see profit in supporting the established order rather than bending the knee to a boy raised at Winterfell, far across the narrow sea, in the great grass plains of the Dothraki. Another raven finds its way to Illyrio Mopatis in Pentos. The Magister reads the message with growing excitement before sending word to Khal Drogo's Khalasar, where Daenerys Targaryen rides beside her sun and stars. When the news reaches the last surviving daughter of Aerys, the Mad King, she can hardly believe what she hears. For her entire life, she has believed herself to be the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, the last Targaryen, with a claim to their ancestral seat. Now she learns that she has a nephew, older than herself, with a stronger claim than her own. Aegon, she whispers, tasting the name of the brother she never knew she had. The revelation changes everything about her mission to reclaim Westeros. She is no longer the rightful queen, but rather the aunt of the rightful king. Viserys, her cruel brother, rages when he hears the news. "Lies!" he shrieks. "I am the rightful king. I am the dragon." But Daenerys thinks of the dragon dreams that have plagued her sleep, dreams of 3 heads and 3 riders. Perhaps those dreams were not about her destiny alone, but about the restoration of House Targaryen through multiple bloodlines. As the news spreads from castle to castle, from holdfast to holdfast, the realm begins to choose sides. Some lords, particularly those in the north and the Riverlands, see legitimacy in Robert's final commands and begin to consider supporting the boy they now know as Aegon Targaryen. Others, bound to the Lannisters by marriage, debt, or fear, rally to Joffrey's cause and denounce the revelation as the ravings of a dying man. The faith of the Seven finds itself divided, with some septons proclaiming the truth of royal bloodlines, while others question the validity of deathbed confessions. The common people whisper in alehouses and markets about dragon kings returning and bastards becoming princes. In the north, the lords who had served House Stark for generations find themselves in an impossible position. Their liege lord, Ned Stark, is imprisoned in King's Landing. His son Robb rules in his absence, but now they learn that Ned's bastard is actually the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. Lord Rickard Karstark speaks for many when he tells his sons, "If the boy is truly Aegon Targaryen, then he has our swords." The North remembers the Mad King's crimes, but we also remember that bastards do not sit the Iron Throne. If he is legitimate, then he is our king. The great houses begin to move like chess pieces on a board that spans the continent. Ravens fly between castles, carrying offers of alliance, threats of war, and promises of support. The revelation that began with Ned's confession to his dying friend has become a spark that threatens to ignite the entire realm in fire and blood. At the heart of it all lies Jon Snow, the bastard boy, who must now choose between his vows to the Night's Watch and a crown he never wanted, but may be forced to claim. The realm waits for his decision, knowing that war will follow regardless of what choice he makes. The Game of Thrones has begun anew, with stakes higher than any have seen since Aegon the Conqueror first set foot on Westerosi soil. And at the center of it all stands a boy who learned his true name when ravens brought word that the king was dead, and the realm was his by right of birth. The great hall of Winterfell has never felt more divided. Catelyn Stark paces before the massive hearth, her face etched with worry lines that have deepened since the ravens arrived from King's Landing. Around the long table sit the lords of the north, their weathered faces grim as they debate the impossible choice before them. "We cannot support the boy," Catelyn declares, her voice sharp with maternal fear. "Jon may be the rightful king, but acknowledging him puts all my children at risk. Sansa is still in the capital, a hostage in all but name. If we declare for Jon, what's to stop the Lannisters from using her against us? Lord Rickard Karstark shifts in his chair, his scarred hands folded on the table. My lady, if the boy is truly Aegon Targaryen, then he is our rightful king. We cannot choose which laws to follow based on convenience. Convenience? Catelyn's eyes flash with anger. This is about protecting my children. Arya is somewhere on the King's Road, travelling in the midst of chaos. Bran lies upstairs, still recovering from his fall. Rickon is barely more than a babe. Would you have me sacrifice them all for the sake of a boy who until yesterday was nothing more than my husband's bastard? Robb Stark sits at the head of the table, wearing the burden of lordship heavily on his young shoulders. At 15, he should be learning swordplay and dreaming of knighthood, not navigating the treacherous currents of succession politics. The weight of his father's absence presses down on him like a physical thing. Mother, he says carefully. Jon is family. He's my brother, my cousin. If he truly has the stronger claim, how can we stand against him? Because blood isn't everything, Catelyn snaps. Your father learned that lesson when he chose to protect Jon instead of telling Robert the truth 16 years ago. And where did that honor lead? To a cell in the Red Keep while his family faces threats from all sides. Maester Luwin clears his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should consider the military realities, my lords. The Lannisters command the largest armies in the realm. Tywin Lannister will not surrender his daughter's position without a fight. If we declare for Jon, we invite war to our very doorstep. Lord Umber, called the great Jon, pounds his fist on the table. Let them come. The North has faced southern armies before and sent them home in pieces. If the boy is king by right, then he has our axes. But Lord Manderley shakes his head. This is different, Great Jon. We're not talking about defending our borders. We're talking about supporting a claimant that the current queen will see as a mortal threat to her children. The Lannisters will not show mercy. Meanwhile, in the Godswood, young Bran Stark sits beneath the heart tree in his wheeled chair. Since his fall from the broken tower, his dreams have grown strange and vivid. But since the ravens arrived speaking of dragons and kings, those dreams have become something more than mere fantasy. He sees visions of three-eyed ravens calling to him from beyond the wall. He dreams of dragons flying over King's Landing, their shadows falling across the Iron Throne. Most disturbing of all, he sees glimpses of his half-brother Jon standing in places Bran doesn't recognize, wearing crowns of ice and fire. The trees remember everything, he whispers to the carved face in the weirwood. They remember when dragons ruled, and they remember when winter lasted a generation. What do they remember about Jon? The wind through the leaves sounds almost like voices, speaking words in tongues Bran doesn't understand, but somehow feels in his bones. There are greater forces at work than the Game of Thrones, older powers stirring as the realm tears itself apart. Back in the Great Hall, the debate continues with increasing intensity. Lord Serwyn speaks for the smaller houses when he says, "The boy has Stark blood, and that means something in the north. But he also has Targaryen blood, and that carries its own burden. Do we really want another dragon king ruling from the south? Better a dragon with northern upbringing than a lion cub with southern arrogance," growls Lord Mormont. "I fought beside Ned Stark at the Trident. I know the measure of the man who raised Jon Snow. That counts for something." Catelyn feels the tide of opinion shifting against her and plays her strongest card. And what of Ned himself? He sits in a Lannister dungeon, accused of treason for trying to protect the realm from Joffrey's illegitimacy. If we declare for Jon, we make Ned's position even more precarious. The Lannisters could execute him as a traitor to spite us. The hall falls silent at this. Every man present knows and respects Eddard Stark. The thought of their liege lord facing the headsman's axe because of their choices weighs heavily on all of them. But Father would want us to do what's right, Robb says quietly. He's spent his whole life teaching us about honor and duty. Would he thank us for abandoning those principles to keep him safe? Catelyn's face softens as she looks at her eldest son. So young to bear such burdens, yet already showing the wisdom that will make him a good lord if he lives long enough. Your father would want his family safe above all else, Robb. Honor is a luxury we may not be able to afford. The great doors of the hall swing open, admitting a travel-stained messenger bearing the colors of House Manderley. The man drops to one knee before Robb's chair, his chest heaving from a hard ride. "My lord," he gasps, "word from White Harbor. Ships flying Lannister banners have been seen moving up the coast. Lord Tywin has called his banners and marches north with an army 20,000 strong." The news hits the assembled lords like a physical blow. The game is no longer theoretical. War is coming to the north, whether they choose it or not. "You see," Catelyn says, though her voice lacks triumph. "We're already seen as enemies. The moment we learned Jon's secret, we became threats to Lannister power." Robb rises from his chair, suddenly looking older than his 15 years. "Then we must choose quickly. We can bend the knee to Joffrey and hope for mercy, or we can stand for what we believe is right and face the consequences." "There's a third option," says a new voice from the doorway. All heads turn to see Jon's friend, Samwell Tarly, pale and nervous, but determined. "A raven came for me from Castle Black. Jon refuses the crown. He says his vows to the Night's Watch are sacred and cannot be broken." The revelation sends shockwaves through the hall. The rightful king refusing his birthright changes everything yet again. "Then the choice is made for us," Lord Karstark says grimly. "If Jon will not be king, then we must look elsewhere for leadership." "Stannis Baratheon has the next strongest claim," suggests Maester Luwin. "Stannis is Robert's brother, not his heir," Robb points out. "If Jon refuses the crown, it doesn't automatically pass to the Baratheons." Catelyn sees opportunity in the confusion. "Then we declare independence. The North has knelt to the Iron Throne for 300 years. But we are not southern puppets. We choose our own kings." "King in the North," the great Jon muses, his eyes lighting up with the idea. It has a fine sound to it. But even as the northern lords begin to rally around the idea of independence, they all understand that the choice has been taken from them by forces beyond their control. Jon's refusal to claim his birthright may save him from the burden of kingship, but it will not save the North from the war that is already marching toward their borders. Robb looks around the hall at the faces of the men who have served his family for generations. Whatever choice they make, blood will be spilled before the snows melt. The Game of Thrones has drawn them all in, willing or not, and now they must play to survive. "Send ravens," he commands, his young voice carrying new authority. "To all our bannermen, to River Run, to the Vale. The North remembers its own, and we will not kneel to southern usurpers." As the lords begin to disperse to carry out their young lord's commands, Catelyn feels a chill that has nothing to do with the northern wind. They have chosen their path, but the cost of walking it may be higher than any of them can imagine. The stark words ring in her mind like a prophecy. Winter is coming, and with it comes war, death, and the testing of every bond that holds their family together. In her solar that night, Catelyn writes letters to Sansa and Arya, knowing they may never receive them. The Game of Thrones has claimed House Stark, and she can only pray that some of her children will survive to see its end. The gates of Castle Black creak open like the jaws of destiny. Jon Snow stands in the courtyard, his black cloak whipping in the cold wind as he stares at the royal escort that has come to take him south. 20 men bearing the direwolf of House Stark and the stag of House Baratheon wait with horses and provisions for a journey that will change the course of the 7 kingdoms. "You don't have to go," Sam Tarly says quietly, standing beside his friend with tears in his eyes. "Your vows are sacred. The Night's Watch protects the realm, and the realm includes whatever throne sits in King's Landing." Jon's hand rests on Longclaw's pommel, the Valyrian steel sword that Lord Commander Mormont gifted him, feeling heavier than ever. "The realm needs a king, Sam. Not a bastard playing at honor, but a true king. If I am truly Aegon Targaryen, then my duty lies elsewhere." The decision has torn at him for days since Maester Aemon's revelation. The old Targaryen had spoken of duty beyond personal desires, of sacrifices that kings must make. "A king's first duty is to his people," Aemon had whispered with his final breath, "even if it costs him everything he believed about himself." Lord Commander Mormont approaches, his weathered face grave. "The Night's Watch has had kings serve before," he says. "Aegon the Unlikely spent time at the wall before taking the crown. Perhaps this is not an abandonment of your vows, but their fulfillment in a different form." Sam presses a leather satchel into Jon's hands. "I've gathered everything I could find about House Targaryen. Lineages, histories, accounts of dragons and their riders. You'll need to understand what you are, Jon, what you've always been." Jon accepts the heavy bag with trembling fingers. Inside are scrolls and books that speak of fire made flesh, of conquerors who united the realm through strength and wisdom. The weight of centuries presses down upon him as he realizes these are not just histories, but the legacy he must somehow claim. Ghost paces restlessly beside his master, the massive white direwolf's red eyes fixed on the southern road. The wolf has been agitated since the ravens arrived, growling at shadows and refusing to hunt. It's as if the animal senses the danger that awaits them in the lands beyond the wall's protection. "Even your wolf knows this is folly," mutters Sir Alistair Thorne, though his words lack their usual venom. "You're riding to your death, Snow. The Lannisters don't negotiate with threats to their power." "Perhaps," Jon replies. "But I won't spend my life wondering if I could have made a difference. The realm bleeds, and if my blood can stop it, then that's a price worth paying." The journey south passes in a blur of changing landscapes and troubled dreams. Each night, as Jon sleeps under the stars, his mind fills with visions that feel more like memories. He dreams of dragons soaring over King's Landing, their shadows falling across the Red Keep like harbingers of change. He sees a woman with silver hair and violet eyes, singing lullabies in a language he doesn't recognize, but somehow understands. Most disturbing are the dreams of fire, not the destructive flames of war, but something warmer, more alive. In these visions, Jon feels fire flowing through his veins like molten gold, and when he wakes, his hands are warm despite the cold northern air. "Targaryen blood runs hot," explains Ser Rodrik Cassel, the grizzled knight who leads their escort. "Your ancestor Aegon the Conqueror was said to never feel cold, even in the depths of winter. Perhaps the dragon is waking in you, my lord?" Jon bristles at the title. He has spent his entire life as a bastard, and the sudden deference from men who outrank him feels like wearing clothes that don't fit. I'm no lord, Sir Roderick. I'm still the same person I was a fortnight ago. Aye, but the realm isn't, the old knight replies. Names have power, my lord, and the name Aegon Targaryen carries more weight than any sword. At Torrhen's Square, they meet with Lord Tallheart, whose weathered face shows the strain of the political crisis tearing the north apart. The lord kneels before Jon's horse, his voice carrying across the courtyard as he speaks words that change everything. Your Grace, Tallheart says, and the title hits Jon like a physical blow. House Tallheart pledges its swords to the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. Other northern lords gather as word spreads of Jon's journey south. Some kneel readily, seeing legitimacy in Robert's final commands and honor in supporting the rightful heir. Others keep their distance, unwilling to commit to a cause that could see their families destroyed. Lord Serwyn speaks for the skeptics when he approaches Jon's camp. You're Ned Stark's boy, I'll grant you that. But Targaryen blood has brought nothing but fire and madness to the realm. How do we know you won't follow in your grandfather's footsteps? Jon looks the older man in the eyes, seeing genuine concern rather than hostility. Because I was raised by Ned Stark, he says simply. He taught me that a king's duty is to protect his people, not rule them through fear. That's the man I choose to be. As they ride through the Wolf's Wood, Jon finds himself remembering fragments of conversations with his father, moments that take on new meaning now that he knows the truth. Ned's careful lessons about duty and sacrifice, his stories of the old kings and their responsibilities, all seem designed to prepare Jon for a destiny that Ned alone understood. The memories blur into waking dreams as Jon reads Sam's texts by firelight. The histories speak of a prophecy, ancient words about a prince who was promised, born of ice and fire. Dragons have 3 heads, the texts claim, and 3 riders will unite the realm when the long night falls again. The dragon must have 3 heads, Jon whispers, reading the words that Rhaegar himself once spoke. His father, his true father, had believed in this prophecy, enough to risk everything for it, had believed it enough to steal away Lyanna Stark and ignite a war that toppled a dynasty. Ghost whined softly, pressing against Jon's side as if sensing his master's turmoil. The direwolf's warmth is comforting, a reminder that some bonds transcend politics and bloodlines. On the 7th day of their journey, Winterfell's towers appear on the horizon, like stone fingers reaching toward the grey sky. Jon's heart pounds as he sees his childhood home, knowing that everything has changed since he last rode through those gates as Ned Stark's bastard. The great gates of Winterfell open to admit them, and Jon sees familiar faces lining the courtyard. But where once there was easy acceptance, now there is uncertainty. Servants bow deeper than they ever did before. Guards straighten their spines, and the very air seems charged with expectation. Robb emerges from the great hall, and for a moment, the 2 young men simply stare at each other across the courtyard. Brothers who are now cousins, equals who must now navigate the treacherous waters of politics and inheritance. Jon, Robb says, and in that single word is a lifetime of shared memories and an uncertain future. Your Grace, Jon replies formally, though it pains him to use titles with the boy who shared his lessons and his dreams. But then Robb crosses the distance between them and pulls Jon into a fierce embrace, and for a moment they are just 2 young men who have lost their father and found themselves thrust into a game they never wanted to play. We need to talk, Robb whispers, about everything. about what this means for all of us. Jon nods, feeling the weight of the crown he has never worn pressing down upon his shoulders. He has come home to Winterfell, but home will never be the same again. The bastard boy who left with Uncle Benjen for the Wall has returned as something else entirely. A king without a kingdom, a dragon raised among wolves, a young man who must somehow unite a realm that seems determined to tear itself apart. As they walk toward the great hall, Ghost padding silently beside them, Jon feels the eyes of history upon him. Somewhere in the crypts below their feet lie the remains of Lyanna Stark, the woman whose love started a war, and whose son might be the only one who can end it. The Game of Thrones has claimed another player, willing or not, and this player carries within his veins the power to either heal the realm's wounds or burn it all to ash. The choice, Jon realizes with growing dread, will be his to make. The Red Keep has become a nest of vipers, each more venomous than the last. Queen Cersei Lannister paces the throne room like a caged lioness, her green eyes burning with fury as she contemplates the Targaryen threat that has emerged from the frozen north. The Iron Throne looms behind her, its twisted metal arms reaching toward the painted ceiling like the blackened bones of dragons. King Joffrey sits, slouched upon the uncomfortable seat, his golden crown askew as he plays with a crossbow. At 13, he possesses all the cruelty of his bloodline, with none of the wisdom that might temper it. The boy king listens with growing excitement as his mother explains the danger that Jon Snow represents to their reign. He calls himself Aegon Targaryen now, Cersei hisses, her voice dripping with venom. The bastard boy claims to be the rightful king, and worse, lords across the realm are beginning to believe it. Your throne, my son, your birthright. They would steal it all and give it to a pretender raised among savages. Joffrey's pale eyes light up with malicious glee. Then we kill him, and anyone who supports him. I'll have their heads on spikes decorating the Red Keep's walls. It's not that simple, Cersei says, though she wishes it were. The boy has supporters now, northern lords, some in the Riverlands, even here in the capital. There are whispers that Robert's final words carry the weight of law. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffles forward, his chains clinking softly. Your Grace, perhaps we might consider accommodation. If the boy truly carries Targaryen blood, there may be ways to legitimize your Grace's reign while acknowledging his heritage. Cersei's slap echoes through the throne room like a thunderclap. Never speak such treason again, old man. My son is the rightful king, anointed by the Seven and crowned before thousands of witnesses. I will not see him bow to any Targaryen bastard. In the shadows near the throne room's pillars, Lord Varys and Lord Baelish exchange meaningful glances. Both men understand that chaos presents opportunity, though they serve different masters in their pursuit of power. The Queen grows desperate, Varys whispers to Littlefinger as they walk the corridors after the audience ends. Desperate enough to make mistakes that clever men might exploit. Littlefinger's lips curve in a cold smile. Desperation makes people predictable, my dear Spider, and predictable people are so very useful. Meanwhile, Cersei retreats to her solar, where ravens wait to carry her commands across the realm. Her first message goes to Casterly Rock, written in the cipher that only her family knows. She calls upon her father's legendary ruthlessness, begging Tywin to march on the north before the Targaryen pretender can consolidate his support. The boy must die, she writes, whatever the cost, whatever it takes. If we allow him to live, he will be our destruction. Her second command is far more immediate and brutal. Cersei summons Sir Ilyn Payne, the king's justice, and speaks words that will echo through the realm like thunder. "Prepare the scaffold," she commands. "Lord Eddard Stark dies at dawn. Let the realm see what happens to those who spread lies about the royal succession." The decision is born from desperation rather than wisdom. With Ned Stark dead, the key witness to Robert's final commands will be silenced forever. No one will remain to testify that the dying king truly acknowledged Jon Snow as his rightful heir. But Varys moves quickly to counter the Queen's gambit. The spider's little birds carry word to those who might act to preserve Ned Stark's life, understanding that the hand's execution would push the realm past any hope of peaceful resolution. "My queen," he says, appearing at Cersei's shoulder like a ghost. "Perhaps we might consider the wisdom of keeping Lord Stark alive. Dead martyrs are far more dangerous than living prisoners." Cersei whirls on him, her face flushed with rage. "The man is a traitor who seeks to destroy my family. He dies, and his bastard can follow him to whatever hell awaits liars and pretenders." The news of Ned's impending execution spreads through King's Landing like wildfire. In the Sept of Baelor, the High Septon speaks to packed crowds about the righteousness of truth and the divine nature of royal bloodlines. His words are carefully chosen, neither condemning nor supporting any claimant, but calling upon the Seven to guide the realm through its time of trial. "The Father judges truly," the High Septon intones. "The warrior protects the righteous. The Mother shows mercy to the innocent. Let all who would claim the crown submit to divine judgment and prove their worth in the sight of the Seven." The faith's words add another layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. Religious authority lends weight to whichever side can claim divine favor, and both Joffrey's supporters and Jon's growing faction seek the blessing of the Seven. In the Tower of the Hand, Sansa Stark huddles in her chambers, terrified by the sounds of preparation outside her window. She can hear carpenters building a scaffold, see the crowds gathering in anticipation of her father's death. The girl who once dreamed of being a queen now finds herself a pawn in a game that threatens to destroy everything she holds dear. Joffrey visits her personally, his pale eyes bright with sadistic pleasure. "Your father dies tomorrow, little dove, unless, of course, the North abandons their precious bastard king and bends the knee to me." Sansa's face goes white as fresh snow. "My father is honorable. He would never lie about something so important." "Your father is a traitor," Joffrey snarls, backhanding her across the face. "And your bastard brother is a pretender who will burn just like all the other Targaryens. But I'm feeling merciful today. Send word to Winterfell. Tell them to abandon Jon Snow's cause, and I might let your father live to see another sunrise." The threat hangs in the air like a sword poised to fall. Sansa understands that her father's life now depends on choices being made hundreds of miles away by people who may not even know she exists. Meanwhile, Cersei's paranoia grows with each passing hour. She sees Targaryen supporters in every shadow, enemies in every corner. When a serving girl drops a wine cup, Cersei suspects sabotage. When a guard shifts his stance, she questions his loyalty. "They're everywhere," she mutters to her brother Jaime when he returns from patrol. "Targaryen sympathizers, northern spies, enemies of the crown. We're surrounded by treachery." Jaime studies his sister with growing concern. The woman who once commanded respect through cold intelligence now shows signs of the madness that claimed their father and grandfather. "Cersei, you're seeing threats that don't exist. The realm may be divided, but we still hold the capital, the treasury, and the largest army in Westeros." "For now," Cersei replies, her voice sharp with fear. "But for how long? How long before the dragon supporters grow bold enough to act? How long before they come for my children? Her fears are not entirely groundless. Ravens arrive daily, with reports of lords declaring for Jon Snow, of armies mustering in the north, of gold flowing from mysterious sources to fund the Pretender's cause. Each message confirms Cersei's belief that a vast conspiracy seeks to destroy her family. That night, as King's Landing sleeps uneasily, Cersei stands on her balcony overlooking the city. The lights below look like stars scattered across black velvet, each one representing lives that hang in the balance. Tomorrow, Ned Stark will die, and with his death, she hopes to silence the voices that question her son's legitimacy. But in her heart, she knows that killing one man will not end the threat. The revelation has taken on a life of its own, spreading through the realm like dragon fire. Lords who never cared about royal bloodlines now debate the fine points of succession law. Commoners who once accepted their king without question now whisper about legitimate heirs and usurped thrones. The Game of Thrones has become a war for the very soul of the realm, with each side convinced that their cause is righteous and their enemies are destroyers of the natural order. Cersei has chosen violence as her answer to political complexity. But violence breeds violence, and the blood she spills tomorrow may water the seeds of her own destruction. In the depths of the Red Keep's dungeons, Ned Stark prepares to meet his fate. The man who kept Jon's secret for 16 years now faces death because he finally told the truth. The irony is not lost on him as he prays to the old gods for forgiveness and strength. Above him, the Targaryen skulls that once decorated the throne room lie hidden in storage, waiting for the day when dragons might once again soar over King's Landing. The wheel of fate turns inexorably toward a future none can predict, where the choices made in desperate hours will echo through generations yet unborn. Cersei Lannister believes she can control that future through fear and violence. Tomorrow's dawn will begin to test whether a lioness's claws can hold back the fire and blood of a resurgent dragon. The realm bleeds before the first sword is drawn. From Casterly Rock to Dragonstone, from Winterfell to Sunspear, banners are called, and armies gather like storm clouds on the horizon. The revelation that began with a dying king's confession has become the spark that ignites the greatest war Westeros has seen since Robert's rebellion. Tywin Lannister sits astride his destrier at the head of 30,000 men, the largest host assembled in the Westerlands since Aegon's conquest. The old lion's face is carved from stone as he surveys the golden banners stretching toward the horizon like a sea of fire. His crimson cloak billows in the wind as he gives the command that will shake the 7 kingdoms to their foundations. "We march for King's Landing," he declares, his voice carrying the authority of decades spent commanding armies. The Pretender thinks northern ice can melt Lannister gold, but he will learn the price of challenging the rightful king. Lord Kevin rides beside his brother, his weathered face troubled. The boy has Stark blood, Tywin. The North will fight for him with everything they have. "Let them come," Tywin replies coldly. "I crushed one rebellion in the name of House Targaryen. I will crush another against it. The realm will remember why lions rule and wolves serve." Meanwhile, on the windswept island of Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon makes a decision that surprises even his closest advisors. The righteous lord stands before the painted table in his sea tower, studying the carved map of Westeros as ravens arrive with news from across the realm. "My lord," Davos Seaworth ventures carefully, "your brother's final words carry legal weight, but they also place you in an impossible position. If you acknowledge the Targaryen boy's claim..." Then I acknowledge the truth, Stannis interrupts, his jaw set like iron. Robert was my brother, but he was also my king. His final commands must be honored, regardless of personal cost. Sir Axel Florent shakes his head in disbelief. You would surrender your birthright to a boy raised as a bastard? The realm expects you to claim the throne, my lord. It is your right as Robert's brother. Stannis fixes his brother-in-law with a stare that could freeze summer wine. Rights? What right did Robert have to the throne? He took it by conquest, nothing more. But this boy, if Robert truly acknowledged him as Rhaegar's legitimate son, then he has a claim that predates our family's rise to power. The decision splits Stannis' household, but the man himself remains unmoved. Ravens fly from Dragonstone, carrying declarations that shock the realm. Stannis Baratheon recognizes Jon Snow as the rightful king Aegon VI Targaryen and pledges his fleet to the dragon's cause. At Storm's End, Renly Baratheon reads his brother's proclamation with a mixture of amusement and calculation. The younger brother has always been more politician than soldier, and he sees opportunity in the chaos consuming the realm. Stannis plays the dutiful brother even now, Renly muses to Lord Randyll Tarly. But duty won't win wars. The Tyrells command the largest armies in the south, and they follow strength, not legal precedents. Lady Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, observes the proceedings with shrewd eyes. The boy may have dragons in his blood, but blood doesn't command armies or fill treasuries. We shall wait and see which way the winds blow before committing our roses to any particular garden. The Reach remains officially neutral, but their neutrality is worth more than most kingdoms' active support. Whoever wins the Queen of Thorns' backing will gain the resources to sustain a long campaign. Far to the south, in the shadow of the Red Mountains, Prince Doran Martell receives the news with carefully concealed satisfaction. For years, Dorne has nursed its grievances against the crown, remembering Princess Elia's murder and the injustices that followed Robert's victory. Send ravens to Winterfell, Prince Doran commands his daughter Orianne, but use discreet channels. The boy carries the blood of Rhaegar Targaryen, the man who loved and married his sister. If he truly seeks to claim his birthright, Dorne remembers its debts. Princess Arianne's dark eyes gleam with interest. An alliance with the Dragon King could restore our family's honor and position. What terms do you propose, father? Justice, Doran replies simply. Justice for Elia, for her children, for all the wrongs committed in Robert's name. If this Jon Snow truly seeks to rule justly, then he will understand Dorne's price for support. The secret negotiations begin immediately, with Dornish envoys taking ship for White Harbor under cover of merchant business. Dorne's 10,000 spears may not match the Westerlands in numbers, but they offer the promise of a southern front that could divide Lannister attention. In the Vale of Orren, Lady Lisa sits in the Ares throne room, rocking her sickly son as she reads reports from the outside world. The Mountain Kingdom remains isolated by choice, its armies unblooded, and its treasuries full. But its lady is mad with grief and paranoia. They all want to hurt my sweetling, she croons to young Robert Arryn. The lions, the wolves, the dragons, they would all take him from me if they could. But the Eyrie is safe. The Eyrie protects us. Sir Jon Royce, the Bronze Jon, argues for intervention. My lady, the realm calls for leadership. The Vale has remained neutral too long, while others decide our fate. Let them fight their wars, Lysa shrieks. Let them bleed each other dry while we remain safe in our mountain fastness. No Arryn will die for southern ambitions while I draw breath. The Vale's isolation means that 40,000 knights remain uncommitted to either side, a force that could tip the balance if it ever chose to leave its mountain strongholds. At Winterfell, Jon Snow stands in the great hall where he once dreamed of belonging, now faced with a crown he never wanted. The assembled northern lords wait for his decision, their weathered faces showing the strain of the crisis that has engulfed their homeland. "I never asked for this," Jon says quietly, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "I wanted nothing more than to serve at the wall, to live and die in defense of the realm. But the realm itself now hangs in the balance, and I cannot choose my own peace over the good of the people." Lord Umber pounds his fist on the table. "The king in the north! The king in the north!" The cry is taken up by others, but Jon raises his hand for silence. "Not the king in the north," he corrects. "If I am to be king, I will be king of all the 7 kingdoms, ruling from the Iron Throne with justice and mercy. The realm has been divided too long. It needs healing, not more separation." Catelyn watches from the high table as the boy she once resented accepts the burden of kingship. There is iron in him now, tempered by duty and sharpened by necessity. He may have Targaryen blood, but his heart was shaped by Ned Stark's teachings. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, disturbing news reaches Daenerys Targaryen as her Khalasar makes camp on the Dothraki Sea. The silver-haired girl reads the message from her spies in Pentos with growing alarm and anger. "A nephew," she whispers, the word tasting strange on her tongue. "Rhaegar's son, alive and claiming my birthright." Ser Jorah Mormont stands beside her, his weathered face grave. "The succession laws are clear, Khaleesi. If the boy is truly Rhaegar's legitimate son, his claim supersedes yours. But laws mean nothing without power to enforce them." Daenerys feels the dragons stirring in their eggs, responding to her emotional turmoil. For months she has planned her return to Westeros, dreaming of reclaiming her family's throne. Now she learns that the throne may already belong to another Targaryen. "Then we sail immediately," she decides. "I will not lose my birthright to a pretender, nephew or not. The Iron Throne belongs to the blood of the dragon, and I mean to see which of us burns brighter." Khal Drogo watches his wife with predatory interest. The great Khal understands little of Westerosi politics, but he knows the scent of war. His Khalasar grows restless, eager for the promised raid across the poison water. As armies march and fleets prepare to sail, the realm holds its breath. 3 claimants now vie for the Iron Throne: Joffrey with his Lannister gold, Jon with his Stark honor and Targaryen blood, and Daenerys with her dragons and Dothraki horde. Each commands formidable resources, and each believes absolutely in the righteousness of their cause. The Game of Thrones has become a 3-sided war that will test every alliance, every oath, and every claim to loyalty in the 7 kingdoms. Fire and blood rise like twin suns over Westeros, promising that before the year ends, the realm will be fundamentally changed. In the north, Jon Snow accepts the crown his father's secret made possible. In King's Landing, Joffrey rages from his iron seat. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys prepares to reclaim what she believes is hers by right of birth. The dragons wake from their long slumber, and the realm trembles at their roar. The wheel of fate turns inexorably toward a confrontation that will echo through the ages. The war for the 7 kingdoms has begun in earnest, and before it ends, the very foundations of power in Westeros will be tested in the crucible of fire and blood. The bells of King's Landing ring out across the Black Water as 30,000 men march toward the capital under banners of direwolf and crowned stag. Jon Snow rides at the head of the host, his black armor gleaming in the morning sun, long claw at his hip, and Ghost running beside his destrier. Behind him stretch the combined forces of the North and Stannis Baratheon's fleet, united in their belief that the rightful king comes to claim his throne. The sight that greets them from the city walls is one of controlled chaos. Tyrion Lannister has spent weeks preparing King's Landing's defenses, his sharp mind working to compensate for the numerical disadvantage his forces face. The little lion stands atop the Red Keep's highest tower, watching as his father's army approaches from the west, while Jon's host advances from the north. "Wildfire," Tyrion murmurs to Sir Jacelyn Bywater, commander of the City Watch. "Our alchemists have prepared enough to turn the black water into a sea of green flames. If we can lure their ships into the trap." "It will work against Stannis' fleet," Bywater acknowledges. "But what of the land forces? 30,000 Northmen won't be stopped by fire on the water." Tyrion's mind races through possibilities, calculating odds that seem to grow worse with each passing hour. "Then we make them pay for every street, every building. King's Landing has survived sieges before." Meanwhile, within the Red Keep's walls, Sansa Stark huddles in her chambers as the sounds of approaching war echo through the castle. She has spent days planning her escape, knowing that when the battle begins, chaos will provide opportunities that peace never could. A raven from Winterfell, hidden in her mattress, carries word that Jon Snow leads the approaching army, and hope blooms in her chest like a flower in spring. Her sister Arya moves through the castle's lower levels, disguised as a serving boy. The younger Stark girl has learned the Red Keep's secrets during her captivity, and she knows passages that even the gold cloaks haven't discovered. When the battle starts, she will be ready to vanish into the city's maze of streets and sewers. On the Blackwater, Stannis Baratheon's fleet moves into position like pieces on a Sivass board. 200 ships bearing the crowned stag advance toward the chain that blocks the river mouth. The Lord of Dragonstone stands on his flagship's deck, his jaw set like iron as he prepares to break the defenses that guard the Lannister stronghold. "Ready the rams," Stannis commands. "We'll break their chain and sail straight to the docks. The city will fall before sunset." But Tyrion has other plans. As the royal fleet advances, green fire erupts across the Blackwater, like the breath of sleeping dragons awakening. The wildfire spreads faster than any natural flame, consuming ships and men with equal hunger. Screams echo across the water as Stannis' vanguard disappears into an inferno that turns the river into molten jade. The explosion shakes King's Landing's very foundations. In the Red Keep's throne room, King Joffrey flinches from the sound like a child afraid of thunder. The boy king has spent the morning boasting of his plans to lead the defense personally, but now his pale face shows the terror that lurks beneath his crown. "Your Grace," Sir Meryn Trant says carefully, "perhaps you should retreat to the holdfast. The battle grows fierce, and your safety." "I'm not afraid," Joffrey shrieks, though his shaking hands betray his words. "I am the king. Kings don't hide from their enemies." Despite his protests, the boy allows himself to be led to the relative safety of Maegor's holdfast, leaving the actual fighting to men with steel in their spines instead of water. On the city walls, Jaime Lannister watches the wildfire spread across the Blackwater with growing horror. The Kingslayer has seen enough of war to recognize a massacre in the making, and his thoughts turn to the small folk who will pay the price for his family's ambitions. "This is madness," he tells Ser Adam Marbrand. "The fire will spread to the city itself. How many innocents will burn for the sake of a crown?" The moral weight of his family's actions presses down on Jaime like a physical thing. Once before he broke his oath to save King's Landing from wildfire. Now he watches as his own brother uses the mad king's weapon to defend Lannister power. The surviving ships of Stannis' fleet struggle through the burning waters, their crews fighting flames and enemy arrows in equal measure. But through the green hell comes a second wave that no one expected. Jon Snow's own fleet, flying banners of white and grey, carrying northern troops who will land wherever the defences are weakest. The Battle of the Blackwater becomes a three-way fight as armies clash on water, land, and the docks themselves. Jon's forces strike at the city's eastern gates, while Tywin's host approaches from the west. Caught between hammer and anvil, King's Landing's defenders find themselves fighting on multiple fronts, with no clear strategy beyond survival. In the chaos of burning ships and screaming men, Sansa makes her move. Disguised as a servant, she slips through corridors filled with smoke and panic, making her way toward the docks where northern banners might mean salvation. Her heart pounds as she recognizes the sounds of battle growing closer with each step. Arya moves through the same chaos like a shadow, her stolen sword clutched in small hands as she navigates passages that most adults couldn't find. The girl who once dreamed of becoming a knight now faces the reality of war in all its brutal glory. The fighting spreads from the waterfront into the city itself. Gold cloaks clash with northern infantry in streets that run red with blood. The sound of steel on steel mingles with the crackle of flames and the screams of civilians caught in the crossfire. Sandor Clegane finds himself in the midst of the burning docks, his scarred face twisted with the old terror that fire has always brought him. But around him, small folk flee in panic from the spreading flames, and something deeper than fear drives the hound forward. "This way!" he shouts to a group of terrified women and children. "Stay low and follow me!" Despite his fear of fire, Sandor leads civilian after civilian to safety, his massive form cutting through smoke and confusion like a ship through troubled waters. The man who has killed for gold and pleasure now risks everything to save lives that mean nothing to kings and queens. Jon Snow's voice carries across the battlefield as he leads his men through the city gates. "For the North! For justice! For the rightful king!" Longclaw cuts through enemy ranks like winter wind through wheat. Ghost tears at the throats of gold cloaks who stand against his master. Northern battle cries echo from stone walls as Jon's army pours into the capital like a flood of ice and iron. In the Red Keep's throne room, the Iron Throne sits empty as its occupant cowers in the holdfast. The twisted metal chair seems to watch the battle through the windows, waiting to see which claimant will survive to rule from its uncomfortable seat. Tyrion coordinates the defense from the walls, his mind working frantically to find some advantage in the chaos below. But even his strategic genius cannot overcome simple mathematics. Too many enemies, not enough defenders, and a king whose courage failed at the first sound of steel. "Fall back to the Red Keep," he commands. "Abandon the outer defences. We'll make our stand where the walls are strongest." As the sun reaches its zenith, King's Landing burns like a funeral pyre for the old order. The city that has stood for 3 centuries faces the flames of change. And when the smoke clears, the 7 kingdoms will never be the same. Jon Snow fights his way through streets he has never seen, but somehow recognizes from his dreams. Each step brings him closer to the Iron Throne and the destiny he never wanted, but can no longer avoid. Behind him, his men follow with the loyalty of those who believe in their cause. The Battle of King's Landing rages on, a crucible of fire and blood that will determine not just who wears the crown, but what kind of kingdom will emerge from the ashes. In the chaos of war, Heroes and cowards reveal their true natures, and the price of power is measured in lives rather than gold. The dragon's roar echoes across the burning city as Jon Snow advances toward his destiny, leaving a trail of conquered enemies and liberated streets in his wake. The rightful king has come to claim his throne, and King's Landing trembles at the sound of his approach. The Iron Throne sits broken in the ruins of the throne room, its twisted metal arms bent and blackened by the fires that swept through the Red Keep. 3 of the great swords that form its base lie scattered across the floor like fallen giants, and the seat where kings have ruled for 3 centuries bears cracks that speak of violence and change. Jon Snow stands before the damaged throne, still wearing the battle-scarred armor that carried him through the streets of King's Landing. Blood and soot stain his black leather, and Longclaw hangs at his side, its blade clean, but its pommel warm from recent use. Around him, the great hall shows the scars of war, tapestries burned, windows shattered, and the painted pillars bearing marks where desperate defenders made their final stands. "It's fitting, somehow," he says to Lord Stannis Baratheon, who stands beside him, surveying the wreckage. "A broken throne for a broken kingdom." Stannis nods grimly. Robert's throne was built on conquest, maintained by force, and lost through betrayal. Perhaps it's time for something better to rise from its ashes. The great doors of the throne room open with a groan of damaged hinges, and northern lords file in alongside survivors of Stannis' fleet and the few Lannister bannermen who bent the knee when the battle ended. Lord Rickard Karstark carries the crown that once belonged to the Kings of Winter, its iron and bronze gleaming despite its age. But it is not the only crown present. Maester Aemon Targaryen, carried in a litter by strong Belwas, holds a circlet of Valyrian steel and rubies, the crown of Aegon, the Conqueror himself, preserved in the crypts beneath Dragonstone and brought across the narrow sea by Stannis' fleet. 2 crowns, Jon murmurs, understanding the choice before him. The king in the north, or the king of all 7 kingdoms. "Choose wisely," Aemon whispers, his blind eyes somehow fixed on Jon's face. A king's first decision sets the tone for all that follows. Will you rule 1 kingdom or heal 7? Jon looks around the assembled lords and knights, seeing faces marked by war, but alive with hope. These men followed him not for personal gain, but because they believed in justice, in the idea that rightful rule should matter more than strength of arms. "I choose the 7 kingdoms," Jon declares, his voice carrying to every corner of the damaged hall. "The realm has been divided too long. It needs a king who serves all its people, not just those who share his blood or banner." The coronation is a simple affair, lacking the pomp and ceremony that marked previous royal investitures. Lord Stannis himself places the Targaryen crown upon Jon's head, speaking words that echo through the realm like thunder. "By right of birth and conquest, by the laws of gods and men, I name you Aegon, 6th of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 kingdoms, and Protector of the realm." The assembled lords kneel as one, their voices joining in the ancient words, "Long live the king. Long live King Aegon." But Jon's first act as crowned king is not to accept homage or distribute rewards. Instead, he turns to Lord Stark, who kneels among the other great lords, despite his years of imprisonment and the grey that has crept into his brown hair. "Rise, Lord Stark," Jon commands, and there are tears in his voice as he speaks to the man who raised him. "Rise, and take your place at my side. I name you Hand of the King, as you were to Robert before me." Ned rises slowly, his weathered face showing the strain of weeks in the Red Keep's dungeons, but his grey eyes are clear and proud as he looks upon the boy he protected for 16 years, now grown into the king he was born to be. "I am honoured, Your Grace," Ned says formally. Then, more quietly, "I am proud of the man you've become, Jon. Your mother would be proud as well." The mention of Lyanna hangs in the air between them, a shared burden that has finally been set down. Jon embraces his uncle, his true uncle now, feeling the weight of years of secrecy lifted from both their shoulders. But the moment of reunion is interrupted by the arrival of prisoners under heavy guard. Cersei Lannister walks with her head high, despite the chains on her wrists, her green eyes blazing with unrepentant fury. Beside her, Joffrey stumbles and weeps, the golden crown that once sat so proudly on his head, now merely another piece of evidence of his false claim. "Your Grace," Sir Davos Seaworth announces, "the prisoners await your judgment." Jon studies the woman and boy who represent the old order, the regime built on lies and maintained through fear. Cersei meets his gaze without flinching, her beautiful face twisted with hatred for the Targaryen who has destroyed her family's power. "You think you've won," she hisses, "but killing a king makes you no different from any other usurper. The realm will remember that you came to power through violence, not justice. The realm will remember that I came to power because Robert Baratheon named me his rightful heir," Jon replies calmly. "But you speak truly about violence. Too much blood has been spilled already. I will not add to it needlessly." The declaration stuns the assembled court. Many expected executions, the traditional fate of defeated claimants and their supporters. Instead, Jon offers something unexpected: mercy tempered with justice. "Joffrey Waters," he says, using the bastard name that strips away all pretense of legitimacy, "you are guilty of usurping the throne and ordering the deaths of innocent men. But you are also a child, led astray by those who should have guided you better. I sentence you to take the black. You will serve at the wall for the remainder of your days, protecting the realm you tried to rule through cruelty." Joffrey collapses in relief, understanding that his life has been spared, even as his crown is lost forever. For Cersei, the judgment is harsher, but still merciful by the standards of Westerosi justice. "Cersei Lannister, you conspired to place a bastard on the Iron Throne and ordered the deaths of those who threatened to expose your crimes. You will be stripped of all titles and lands and confined to the Silent Sisters for the rest of your days." "I will not beg for mercy I don't deserve," Cersei says proudly. "But my children, Myrcella and Tommen, are innocents in this. They deserve better than their mother's sins." Jon nods gravely. "They will be treated with honor befitting their station as Lord Tywin's grandchildren. No child will pay for their parents' choices while I rule." As the prisoners are led away, the great doors open again to admit figures that bring joy instead of judgment. Sansa Stark runs across the throne room floor, her copper hair streaming behind her as she throws herself into her father's arms. Behind her comes Arya, moving more cautiously but with tears in her grey eyes as she sees her family whole again. "Father," Sansa sobs against Ned's chest, "I knew you would come for us. I knew Jon would come." Arya approaches more slowly, studying Jon with the sharp eyes of someone who has seen too much of war's reality. "You look different," she says finally. "Like a king." Jon kneels to meet his sister's gaze, seeing the steel that has been forged in her young heart by months of captivity and fear. "I am different. But I'm still your brother, Arya. That will never change." The family reunion is interrupted by practical matters of governance. Lords arrive seeking audiences. Ravens carry urgent messages from across the realm, and the mundane business of ruling a kingdom cannot wait for personal moments. Jon's first royal decree addresses the immediate crisis facing the realm. Standing before the damaged Iron Throne, he speaks words that will reshape the political landscape of Westeros. "To all lords and knights who took arms against my claim," he announces, "I offer this choice. Bend the knee and swear fealty to the rightful king, and your past opposition will be forgiven. Continue in rebellion and face the consequences of treason. But to those who fought only for honor and duty to their liege lords, I bear no malice. The realm needs healing, not more bloodshed." The decree divides the court between those who counsel harsher measures and those who support the king's merciful approach. But Jon has made his choice, setting the tone for a reign that will prioritize justice over vengeance. As evening falls over King's Landing, Jon stands on the balcony of his royal chambers, looking out over the city that now acknowledges him as king. The Blackwater still bears scorch marks from the wildfire, and smoke rises from districts that burned during the fighting. Rebuilding will take years, and healing the realm's wounds will take longer still. Ghost pads silently to his side, the great white direwolf's presence, a reminder of simpler times when Jon's greatest worry was whether he belonged at Winterfell's high table. Now he must concern himself with the welfare of millions, balancing the competing demands of justice, mercy, and political necessity. "The easy part is over," he murmurs to his companion. "Now comes the hard work of being a king." Behind him, the Iron Throne sits empty and broken, a symbol of the old order's collapse. Tomorrow, craftsmen will begin the work of repair, but Jon has already decided that when they do, they will change its design. The Throne of Swords will become something new, built not just for intimidation, but for the comfort of those who must bear the crown's weight. The king's peace has come to Westeros, bought with blood and fire, but sustained by the promise of justice for all. Aegon VI Targaryen has claimed his birthright, but the greater challenge of earning it through righteous rule has only just begun. The dragons return to Westeros with the sound of thunder and the shadow of ancient power. 3 great beasts soar over Blackwater Bay, their wings blotting out the sun as they circle King's Landing, like harbingers of a new age. From the Red Keep's highest tower, Jon watches the creatures of legend approach, feeling something stir in his blood that he has never experienced before, a recognition, as if the dragons sense kinship in him. Daenerys Targaryen lands her forces on the shores of Dragonstone with all the pageantry of a returning queen. 10,000 Dothraki warriors disembark from their ships alongside 8,000 unsullied, their bronze shields gleaming in the morning light. But it is the dragons that command attention, perching on the ancient towers of Aegon's seat like living gargoyles, come to judge the realm below. The message arrives at the Red Keep within hours, carried by a raven bearing the 3-headed dragon seal of House Targaryen. Jon breaks the wax with fingers that tremble slightly, knowing that the words within will test everything he has built since claiming the Iron Throne. "To the pretender who sits upon my family's throne," the letter begins, written in High Valyrian script that Jon struggles to read. "I am Daenerys of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. You claim the name Aegon, but I am the blood of the dragon. Submit to your rightful queen, or face the consequences of your continued usurpation." Lord Tyrion Lannister, who has spent weeks in comfortable captivity awaiting the king's pleasure, reads the letter over Jon's shoulder. The dwarf's clever mind immediately grasps the implications of this development. She doesn't know, Tyrion observes. My nephew's former queen believes herself to be the sole surviving Targaryen. This could be opportunity or disaster, depending on how your grace chooses to handle it. Jon sets the letter aside and studies the man who served as hand to both Joffrey and Daenerys in her eastern campaigns. You know her well. What manner of queen is she? Complicated, Tyrion replies honestly. She has a good heart and genuinely wishes to help the downtrodden. But she also has dragons and the temperament to use them. Fire and blood flow in her veins as surely as in yours, your grace, though she has had different teachers. The decision to meet with Daenerys is made, despite the protests of Lord Stark and the small council. Jon understands that war with another Targaryen claimant could destroy the realm he seeks to heal, especially when that claimant commands dragons and foreign armies. The meeting takes place on neutral ground, the ancient dragon pit of King's Landing, where Targaryen dragons once roosted before the civil war that doomed them all. Jon arrives with a small escort, including Ghost at his side and Longclaw on his hip. The great white direwolf's red eyes never leave the dragons perched on the ruined dome above. Daenerys Targaryen is smaller than Jon expected, but her presence fills the ancient amphitheatre like wildfire contained in a maiden's form. Her silver-gold hair catches the light as she approaches, flanked by her advisors and the massive form of a dragon that watches Jon with intelligent violet eyes. So, she says when they stand face to face, you are the boy who claims my throne. I claim nothing that is not mine by right, Jon replies carefully. I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Prince Rhaegar and Lady Lyanna Stark. If the laws of succession mean anything, then the throne belongs to me. For a moment, silence reigns in the dragon pit. Daenerys stares at Jon with growing understanding, her violet eyes wide with shock as the implications sink in. Rhaegar's son, she whispers. My nephew. You are my nephew. And you are my aunt, Jon acknowledges. The blood of old Valyria flows in both our veins, though we were raised in different worlds. The revelation transforms the meeting from confrontation to something far more complex. Daenerys circles Jon slowly, studying his features with new understanding. You have the look of him, she murmurs. Rhaegar. The same eyes, the same bearing. But there is something else, something northern in your face. I was raised as Ned Stark's bastard, Jon explains. He taught me to value honor above ambition, duty above desire. I never wanted the throne, but circumstances have placed it in my hands. Daenerys laughs bitterly, and I have wanted nothing else my entire life. I have conquered cities, freed slaves, and crossed the world to reclaim what I believed was mine by right. Now I find that right belongs to another. The conversation that follows stretches through the afternoon. Two Targaryens discovering each other across a gulf of experience and expectation. Daenerys speaks of her exile, her dragons, her mission to break the wheel that crushes the common people. Jon tells of his bastard birth, his time at the Wall, his reluctant acceptance of a crown he never sought. The realm needs unity, Jon says finally, not more war between dragons. If we fight each other, we serve no one but our enemies. Unity, Daenerys repeats, tasting the word. And how do you propose we achieve that? There is only one Iron Throne, nephew. It is Tyrion who suggests the solution that will reshape the political landscape once again. In the old days of Aegon, the Conqueror, husband and wife ruled together. Two dragons, one throne, united in purpose if not always in method. The suggestion hangs in the air like dragon fire, dangerous and transformative. Jon feels the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders once more, understanding that personal desires matter less than the needs of the realm. But even as the Targaryens negotiate, other forces move to challenge Jon's rule. In Winterfell, the Northern Lords gather to debate whether a king who claims the Iron Throne can still be their king. Lord Greatjon Umber speaks for many when he pounds his fist on the table. "We didn't fight and die to put another Southern king on the Iron Throne," he roars. "Jon Snow was our king, but this Aegon Targaryen sits in King's Landing and speaks of ruling all 7 kingdoms. What does that make us? Subjects again?" Lord Manderley counters with political wisdom, born of long experience. The boy carries Stark blood as surely as Targaryen. His heart was shaped in these halls by Northern values and Northern honor. Better a king who understands us than one who sees us only as distant subjects. Meanwhile, in Winterfell's Godswood, Bran Stark sits beneath the heart tree and sees visions that chill his blood more than winter wind. The three-eyed raven shows him glimpses of the far north, where ancient enemies stir behind a wall that has stood for 8,000 years. "The dead wake," Bran whispers to the carved face in the weirwood. "They come with ice and hate, and the living world stands divided against itself, while the true enemy approaches." His visions show him armies of whites marching south, their blue eyes burning like winter stars. He sees the Night King astride an undead dragon, bringing eternal winter to a world consumed by political squabbling. Most terrifying of all, he sees the wall itself, that great barrier of ice and magic, beginning to crack under assault from powers older than memory. Ravens fly south from Winterfell carrying urgent warnings, but they arrive at King's Landing to find the court consumed by the Targaryen reunion. Jon reads Bran's message with growing alarm, understanding that all their political victories will mean nothing if the realm falls to the army of the dead. "Dragons," he murmurs to himself, looking out at the creatures perched on Dragonstone. "We'll need dragons." The realization transforms his perspective on Daenerys' arrival. What seemed like a challenge to his rule now appears as the answer to a threat beyond all mortal politics. The reunion of fire and ice, of dragon and wolf, may be the realm's only hope against the darkness gathering in the far north. That evening, as Jon walks the battlements of the Red Keep with Ghost padding beside him, he contemplates the choice before him. He can fight Daenerys for sole claim to the throne, weakening both their positions while the true enemy approaches. Or he can propose an alliance that goes beyond politics to something deeper. A union of the last dragons to face the longest night. The decision will reshape not just their personal destinies, but the fate of every living soul in Westeros. The Game of Thrones continues, but the stakes have risen beyond mere power to the very survival of the world. Jon Snow, who became Aegon Targaryen, who became King of the 7 Kingdoms, now faces his greatest test, convincing his Dragon Queen aunt that their true enemy lies not in each other, but in the ancient darkness stirring beyond the wall. In the distance, the dragons roar as if sensing the approaching storm. The time for political maneuvering is ending, and the time for the greatest war in the history of Westeros approaches like winter itself, inevitable, implacable, and absolutely merciless to those who stand divided against it. The dragon's roar shakes the very foundations of Dragonstone as Jon Snow approaches the great black beast that Daenerys calls Drogon. The creature's golden eyes study him with intelligence older than memory, and steam rises from its nostrils as it scents the Targaryen blood flowing in his veins. "Dragons know," Daenerys says softly, standing beside Jon on the ancient Valyrian platform, where Aegon the Conqueror once planned his conquest. They can sense the blood of old Valyria. But sensing and accepting are different things. Many with dragon blood have tried to ride, and died screaming in dragonfire. Jon extends his hand slowly, feeling the heat radiating from Drogon's scales. The dragon sniffs his palm, then, surprisingly, gently nudges against it, like a cat seeking affection. Ghost watches from a safe distance, the dire wolf's red eyes reflecting an ancient understanding between predator and predator. "Easy, boy," Jon whispers, using the same tone he's always used with Ghost. "We're family, aren't we?" When Jon swings himself onto Drogon's back, the world explodes into motion and wind. The dragon launches skyward with a powerful thrust of wings that could span a ship, carrying his new rider into the clouds above Blackwater Bay. For the first time in his life, Jon understands what it truly means to be a Targaryen, to command the sky itself, to soar above the petty concerns of earthbound men. From Drogon's back, he sees Westeros spread below him like a painted map. The realm looks smaller from this height, more fragile, and he understands how Aegon the Conqueror must have felt when he first gazed down at the Seven Kingdoms and saw not separate nations, but one land waiting to be united. When they land, Daenerys greets him with tears in her violet eyes. "You are truly the blood of the dragon," she says. "Drogon has accepted only one other rider since he hatched. My dragons know their family." The flight proves what words alone could not. That night, in the great hall of Dragonstone, where Aegon once planned his conquest, Jon and Daenerys sign agreements that will reshape the realm. Not just a military alliance, but something deeper, a union of ice and fire, wolf and dragon, north and south. "Joint rule," Jon says, reviewing the terms that Tyrion has helped draft. "King and queen together, neither subordinate to the other. Our children will inherit a united realm." Daenerys nods, though her expression remains thoughtful. "It's not how I imagined claiming my birthright, but perhaps it's better this way. The wheel that crushes the common people needs more than one hand to break it properly." The marriage ceremony takes place 3 days later, in the ancient tradition of Old Valyria, with fire and blood binding them before gods and men. When they emerge from the Sept of Dragonstone as husband and wife, ravens fly to every corner of Westeros, carrying news that the Targaryens are united once more. But even as lords pledge their allegiance to the dual monarchy, darker news arrives from the north. Sam Tarly's ravens reach King's Landing from the Citadel, where the young Maester has spent months researching weapons that might stand against the army of the dead. "Dragon glass," Sam writes in his careful scholar's hand. "The children of the forest used it against the White Walkers in the old wars. But more than that, Valyrian steel carries the same properties, forged with dragon fire and blood magic. Every blade in Westeros could make a difference, but we need more. The crypts beneath Dragonstone hold secrets, ancient forges that might still work if dragons breathe fire upon them once more." Jon reads the letter aloud to the assembled council, watching as understanding dawns on faces around the table. Lord Stannis, who has remained as master of ships, nods grimly. The boy speaks sense. "We've gathered armies, but armies mean nothing if the dead cannot be killed by ordinary steel. We need weapons that can actually harm them." The next weeks pass in frantic preparation. Dragonstone's ancient forges roar to life as Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion breathe dragonfire into the Valyrian furnaces. Smiths work day and night crafting dragonglass weapons, spearheads, arrowheads, daggers, anything that might pierce undead flesh. Ravens carry orders throughout the realm. Every smith capable of working Valyrian steel must come to Dragonstone. Every lord must contribute what weapons they can spare. The great houses that once schemed against each other now work together, united by the knowledge that extinction respects no banners or bloodlines. It is Bran Stark's ravens that bring the news that changes everything. The young lord's message arrives as Jon and Daenerys oversee weapon production in the great forges of Dragonstone. The wall has fallen, Bran writes. The Night King commands an undead dragon, blue-eyed and terrible. Eastwatch is destroyed, and the army of the dead marches south. 100,000 wights, maybe more. They will reach Winterfell within a fortnight. The words hit the assembled council like a physical blow. Jon feels ice in his veins as he realizes that all their planning may have come too late. How? Daenerys asks, her voice barely a whisper. How does the Night King have a dragon? The answer comes from an unexpected source. Tyrion, whose extensive reading of ancient texts provides the horrifying truth. The legends speak of ice dragons, he says quietly, creatures of winter that were old when the world was young. Perhaps the Night King didn't need to kill one of yours, Your Grace. Perhaps he simply woke something that was already sleeping in the ice. Jon looks out at the 3 dragons perched on Dragonstone's towers, magnificent creatures that suddenly seem fragile against the ancient power stirring in the north. Then we march now. Every soldier, every weapon, every dragon. If Winterfell falls, the dead will have an open road to King's Landing and beyond. The mobilization that follows dwarfs anything Westeros has seen since Aegon's conquest. Lannister gold pays for provisions, while Tyrell grain feeds the armies. Dornish spears march alongside northern axes, and ironborn ships carry troops that would have been enemies just months ago. Jon leads the vanguard north, riding beside Daenerys as their dragons soar overhead. Behind them stretches the largest army ever assembled in Westeros, not for conquest or glory, but for survival itself. At Winterfell, they find a castle transformed into a fortress of the living. The great keep's walls bristle with dragon-glass weapons, and every man, woman, and child capable of holding a blade has been armed. The crypts have been sealed with iron bars, for even the honored dead cannot be trusted when the Night King approaches. Jon walks the battlements, where he learned swordplay as a boy, now planning humanity's last stand. The Godswood, where he prayed to the old gods, now serves as a command center, with battle plans spread beneath the heart tree's ancient branches. It ends here, he tells his assembled commanders, northern lords, southern knights, foreign sellswords, and Dothraki warriors all united in purpose. Whatever comes through that darkness, we stop it at Winterfell. The dead may have numbers, but the living have something they lack, the will to protect what matters. Ghost sits beside his master's chair, the great white dire wolf's presence, a reminder of simpler times. But those times are past. Tomorrow will bring the longest night in 8,000 years, and when the sun rises again, if it rises again, the world will be forever changed. Daenerys joins Jon on the battlements as night falls, her hand finding his as they look north toward the darkness that approaches like a tide of winter. 3 dragons rest in Winterfell's courtyard, their presence a beacon of hope in the gathering gloom. Fire and blood, she murmurs, speaking the words of her house. Winter is coming, Jon replies, echoing the words of his. Together, ice and fire united, they wait for the dead to come. The Game of Thrones is ending, and the game of survival is about to begin. In the distance, a cold wind begins to blow, carrying with it the scent of death and the promise of an ending that will echo through the ages. The Night King approaches Winterfell, and with him comes the test that will determine whether the living deserve to inherit the world, or whether the age of men is finally at its end. The longest night in 8,000 years begins with the sound of winter wind howling through Winterfell's gates. Jon Snow stands atop the battlements, long claw in his hand, and ghost at his side, watching as darkness deeper than any natural night approaches from the north. In the distance, blue eyes burn like cold stars, and the temperature drops until every breath becomes a cloud of mist. The army of the dead stretches to the horizon, like a sea of bone and rotting flesh. 100,000 wights march in perfect silence, their movements coordinated by a malevolent intelligence that has waited millennia for this moment. Above them soars the ice dragon, its blue flame colder than winter itself, carrying the Night King toward his final conquest. "Light the trenches!" Jon roars, and fire blooms across the field as dragon-glass-tipped arrows ignite the oil-soaked barriers. The flames create a barrier of light against the encroaching darkness, but even dragonfire seems small against the vast horde approaching Winterfell's walls. Daenerys takes to the sky aboard Drogon, while Jon mounts Rhaegal and Viserion carries additional fighters armed with dragonglass spears. The three dragons roar as they climb into the dark sky, their flames the only source of light in a world consumed by unnatural night. The battle erupts with violence that shakes the very foundations of the ancient castle. Wights throw themselves against the burning trenches, their bodies becoming fuel for the flames even as others climb over them. The living fight with desperate fury, knowing that failure means not just death, but eternal servitude to the Night King's will. Arya Stark moves through the chaos like a shadow made flesh, her Valyrian steel blade finding gaps in undead armor that ordinary steel could never penetrate. The girl who once dreamed of knighthood now fights with skills learned in the House of Black and White, death personified in a form the Night King never expected. In the God's Wood, Bran Stark sits beneath the heart tree with his eyes rolled back, his consciousness ranging across the battlefield like an all-seeing raven. Through his power, he coordinates the defense, warning of flanking movements and identifying weak points in the enemy lines. His voice echoes in the minds of key commanders, guiding their movements with supernatural precision. High above the battle, Jon faces his greatest test. The ice dragon's breath turns stone to powder and steel to brittle shards, but Rhaegal's fire burns hotter than winter cold. Dragon fights dragon in aerial combat that lights up the night sky, while their riders prepare for a confrontation that will determine the fate of all living things. The Night King dismounts from his ice dragon atop Winterfell's highest tower, his ancient sword gleaming with malevolent blue light. Jon lands Rhaegal in the courtyard and climbs toward his destiny, knowing that this battle cannot be won by armies, but only by the courage of those willing to sacrifice everything. "You have waited long enough," Jon says, as they face each other in the God's Wood, surrounded by the sounds of battle. "But winter ends tonight." The Night King's response is not words but action. His blade moves with inhuman speed, striking sparks from Longclaw as Jon parries desperately. Around them, the Heart Tree's red eyes seem to weep as two forces that have shaped the world for millennia clash in single combat. Meanwhile, Daenerys battles the ice dragon with Drogon's flames, their aerial duel creating a second front in the sky above Winterfell. The black dragon's fire melts ice scales and tears frozen wing membranes. But the undead creature feels no pain, no fear, only the Night King's implacable will to destroy all warmth in the world. The turning point comes when Arya strikes from the shadows, her blade finding the gap in the Night King's armor that no prophecy predicted. But it is not her blow alone that breaks the ancient enemy. It is the combined power of ice and fire, wolf and dragon, all the forces of the living world united against the darkness. As the Night King falls, his ice sword shattering against the Godswood's frozen ground, the change ripples across the battlefield like a wave. Whites collapse into the dust they should have been millennia ago. The ice dragon dissolves into falling snow. The unnatural cold retreats, and for the first time in hours, stars become visible in the sky above Winterfell. The Battle of Winterfell is over, but the victory belongs to all the living, not just those who struck the final blows. Every soldier who held the line, every archer who aimed true, every smith who forged dragon-glass weapons contributed to humanity's survival. In the aftermath, as dawn breaks over a battlefield strewn with the remains of the dead, Jon and Daenerys stand together in the Godswood where the Night King fell. The heart tree's carved face seems peaceful now, its red eyes no longer weeping but watchful, as if the old gods themselves approve of what has been accomplished. "It's over," Daenerys says, though her voice carries wonder rather than triumph. The long night has ended. One ending, Jon agrees, and one beginning. The realm survived, but now we must prove worthy of that survival. The months that follow see the greatest reconstruction effort in Westerosi history. The great council that convenes at Harrenhal includes not just the great lords, but representatives of the common people whose blood was spilled in the war against the dead. Together, they forge new laws that will govern the Seven Kingdoms for generations to come. The Iron Throne is melted down and reforged, its twisted metal reshaped into something that serves justice rather than intimidation. In its place rises a council chamber where king and queen rule together, advised by voices from every corner of the realm. Jon's first decree as the king who saved the world establishes schools in every major town, places where common children can learn letters and numbers alongside the arts of war and statecraft. Knowledge is the greatest weapon against the darkness, he proclaims, whether that darkness comes from beyond the wall or from the ignorance that breeds in men's hearts. The wall itself is rebuilt, not as a barrier against ancient enemies, but as a monument to unity, a place where the Watch trains defenders not against mythical threats, but against the very real dangers of raiders and wildlings seeking to make new lives south of the ancient barrier. Tyrion Lannister serves as hand to the dual monarchy, his quick wit finally applied to creation rather than mere survival. Under his guidance, roads spread across the realm like veins, carrying life to previously isolated regions. Trade flourishes as former enemies discover the prophets of peace. Years pass, and the realm heals from its wounds. Children grow up hearing stories of the long night as distant legend rather than living memory. The dragons age and die, but their legacy lives on in the peace they helped purchase with fire and blood. Jon stands once more on Winterfell's battlements, now grey-haired and weathered by the responsibilities of kingship. Beside him, Daenerys watches their children play in the courtyard below, the next generation of Targaryens who will inherit a world shaped by their parents' choices. "Do you ever regret it?" she asks, taking his hand as they look out over the peaceful north. "The crown, the throne, the weight of ruling?" Jon considers the question, as he has many times over the years. The bastard boy who never dreamed of wearing a crown has become a king who saved the world from eternal darkness. The journey cost him friends, innocence, and the simple life he once thought he wanted. "I regret the pain it caused," he says finally. "The deaths, the suffering, the years of war before we found peace. But regret wearing the crown? No. The realm needed healing, and somehow we managed to provide it." Ghost, now ancient and grey-muzzled, lies at their feet, no longer the fierce wolf who fought beside his master against the dead, but still a faithful companion in the sunset of their shared lives. The dire wolf's presence reminds Jon of simpler times, when his greatest worry was earning a place at his father's table. As the sun sets over the north, painting Winterfell's stones in shades of gold and crimson, Jon reflects on the journey that brought him from bastard to king, to the man who ended the long night. The Game of Thrones claimed many lives, but from its ashes rose something better. A realm where justice matters more than birthright, where the strong protect the weak, and where the lessons learned in darkness help guard against future shadows. The wheel has been broken, as Daenerys always dreamed, but in its place stands something better. A world where power serves the people rather than ruling over them. The song of ice and fire has been sung, and its melody will echo through the ages, reminding future generations that even the longest night must end when the living stand together against the dark. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.